Hey team, hope you're all doing well. I hope you're going to enjoy this. This is basically a sub 3 hour marathon formula mini course that I wanted to compile. It's a mixture of different videos that I've created over the past 5 years that I hope will help you get under the 3 hour marathon barrier. I want to first point out that you don't need super shoes to break the 3 hour marathon. You need a very strong mindset. Okay, you need to make sure that you're paying attention to the fundamentals, and I think that these compilation of different videos will help set you up for success. It's a small portion of the sub 3 hour marathon pro course, but not the course itself. That course is much more in depth, but some of the things you're going to be learning through these particular videos as I talk about different topics throughout the various videos that I've made. I hope that they will help you in your journey of breaking 3 hours. I wanted to first point out here, these were the shoes that I was wearing when I ran 2:19:35. These are 3K, 5K, basically indoor or outdoor flats, okay, racing flats, and now, we have the new super shoes, the more advanced technology, but I ran the 2:19:35 at the 2007 California International Marathon in these shoes, and as you can see, there's not much cushion, okay. You don't need fast racing shoes. Of course, now utilize those tools, okay. If I was, I would be wearing the Alpha Flies and the new shoes that they have now. It's not about the shoes, okay. It's about the training that you're putting in, the philosophy that you're following, the concepts that you're attacking in training, the things that you're doing on and off the track and on and off the roads as you prepare for your races. And the first video that you see here that I'm going to add in here, the very first video, is the first video I made on this channel in January of 2019. Okay, you're going to see a variation of camera quality and sound quality is going to eventually get better, obviously, now compared to when I first made my first video. But I want to first start this mini course, this sub 3 hour marathon formula mini course, sharing that particular video with you just to show you my very first video that I made here. And I'm going to continue to add in some additional insights throughout this whole mini course, and I really hope that by the end that you'll watch this from the start to the end, and that you'll really get a lot out of it. And my goal is to help you train smarter, not harder. Okay, so enjoy this mini course. It's a mixture of various videos that I've created for over the past 5 years, and I really hope that you enjoy it. So with that being said, let's get started.
Good evening, everybody. This is Nathan Pennington. I'm the founder of RunDreamAchieve.com, and I just want to make a small, short video this evening in regards to the sub 3 hour marathon. I just completed a very, very in-depth course called the Sub 3 Hour Marathon Pro, which is going to be focused on helping athletes get under that 3 hour marathon barrier. And it's very, very aggressive. There is very, very few marathoners around the world that actually break that barrier each year, and the runners that are doing it are definitely practicing at below race pace in order to hold that pace for that amount of time. So the pace per mile is 6:52 per mile. It comes out to also 4:16 per kilometer. So that's 6:52 per mile for 26.2 miles, 4:16 a kilometer for 42.18 kilometers for the distance. So my best tip that I can give you, and this is just a little piece of the course itself, is to focus on your long run. Your long run should be the most difficult workout that you do. It's a workout that in the past, I would run very easy. I would run preparing for marathons, I'd run between 20 and 24 miles in length, but it was always around like 6:30 to 7 minute per mile pace. And I would do the speed work, I would do the hill repetitions, tempo runs, things like workouts like that. But it wasn't until 2007 that I started working with the U.S. Army World Class Athlete Program and a 1985 Boston Marathon Boston Marathon champion, Lisa Rainsberger, that I totally switched up the way I trained for the marathon. And that biggest change was the pace that I was doing the long run at. So instead of doing 6:30 to 7 minute mile pace, I was doing long runs between in the 520s to 550s per mile pace at altitude. So drastic change, a major shift in the psychology piece of it, your mental training. I'm a firm believer that you absolutely must see what you want in your mind first before it becomes a reality in real life. And I definitely believe that. Billy Mills, who was the last Olympic gold medalist in the 10,000 meters, said it perfectly. He said that the subconscious mind cannot tell the difference between reality and imagination. And that is absolutely 100% fact. I visualized dozens of times a day, every single day, running under 2 hours and 22 minutes, which back in 2008 was the Olympic trials B standard time. And it was a time that I needed to run in order to be a legitimate soldier athlete in the U.S. Army World Class Athlete Program. That was the bare minimum time that I needed to run. So a lot of RunDreamAchieve.com has been built around that. It's been built around helping athletes get beyond the mental, the psychological aspect of running performances that they perhaps at this point may not believe they can achieve. There was a time where I debuted in the marathon with a 2:43:36 at the 2002 New York City Marathon. And it took from 2002 to 2007 to run from 2:43 to 2:19:35, which is my PR right now. Sub 3 hours is very aggressive running. So if you're wanting to break a 3-hour marathon, I don't care if you're at 3:59 right now or your PR is 3 hours and 2 seconds. The fundamentals, the strategies that you have to follow are universal, regardless if you're a beginner athlete or you're an elite athlete. The long run, you have to change up how you're conducting that. If you're running easy every weekend doing long runs, that's not going to actually really prepare you to break a 3-hour marathon. You're talking 6:52 mile pace, 416 kilometers for 42K with no rest. So you have to change up the way you're doing the long run. It doesn't mean you have to run hard every single weekend. That's definitely a great way to get burned out and to get stale very quickly. But you do have to run aggressive, gradually increase the distance that you're running, and then over time gradually hold your heart rate at a higher heart rate. Usually when I was doing it, when I was training, and I'm still training full-time while working full-time, but at my highest training levels, I was running at 160 heart rate. So that's about anywhere from 85 to 88% of your max heart rate, depending on your age. But at that particular pace, that's where I got the best results at. And you'll notice, obviously, in the beginning of a training block, you're not going to be able, if you're running at 160, you may be running at 640 pace early on the first few weeks, and then you're gradually going to see your pace dropping down to like 615, 605, 545. This is as you get fitter. Fitness for a sub 3-hour marathon does not come overnight. I absolutely stress that you just stay patient. That's really the key with being successful in the marathon distance. This isn't a 5K or a 10K event where you can 3 miles or 6 miles and it's over. The marathon is obviously 26 miles, 42K. You have to make sure that you're not drinking or not sipping in the race or in training. Teach yourself to learn how to drink. If you look at the best marathoners in the world, they're out there, they're drinking as they're running. And they're holding, you notice too, they're holding the water bottle or their fluid bottle for as they're running. So practice that in training. Don't just sip, a few sips in training or in the race. That's a huge mistake I made personally. I've seen a lot of marathoners make. They're not taking in enough fluids and they're not taking in enough calories during the race. You cannot expect your body to perform at the highest levels if you're not consuming enough calories. That's something you can practice. That's something I had to practice in training. I had a lot of marathons that for whatever reason, I would finish the race and I would be way off where I wanted to run. And it really came down to one, starting to work with some really, really phenomenal coaches, uh, incredible mentors of mine. Lisa Rainsberger, 1985 Boston Marathon champion, Jack Hazen, who was my collegiate coach from 1995 to 2000. He was the 2012 USA Olympic track and field assistant coach, and Dr. Joe Vigil, who's one of the world's most world-renowned exercise physiologists. These professionals taught me that to break a 3-hour marathon, one, you have to practice that long run. You have to get it to where you're varying up your paces. It's not just one easy long run every weekend that's 45 seconds to a minute above goal marathon race pace. So if you want to hold 6:52 marathon pace for 26.2 miles or 4:16 a kilometer for 42.1 K, you absolutely must practice running at or below that goal marathon pace, and that definitely takes time. So I know it's this is just my first video. I've made it a commitment of mine in 2019 to make more videos. I know that I've been producing a huge amount of content on RunDreamAchieve since November of 2011. So I want to make more videos. I want to get more engaged with my readers, and I hope this these few tips. One, make sure that you focus on not sipping in training and sipping fluids in the race. That is one of the biggest killers of a marathon race time that's out there, and that's one huge training aspect and racing aspect of the marathon that runners miss. And because of that, they start to second guess themselves. Well, maybe I don't have what it takes to break a 3-hour marathon, or maybe I'm too old to break 3 hours. That's not the case. It's a matter of training properly, focusing on recovery, and not running too hard on your recovery days, but practicing taking in more fluids, taking in more calories during your training, and do it in training first. If you're going to make any mistake whatsoever, do it in training. That way you get to the race and you can adjust, and you've been there. You've already done it in training. So focus on getting more fluids in, more calories during your long runs. Practice, sitting water bottles out every 3 miles. That's going to help you out, because then you can practice that, that motion of having to hold the bottle while you're running, doing a 10 to 20 mile long run in training. So then when you get to the race, you've practiced that. It's become second nature, and then it gets a lot easier. And one, you'll be much more better prepared to not be running out of energy in the race, because you've practiced it in training. So, and two, training at and below goal marathon race pace. You absolutely have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. I brought that up in a few of my recent posts. That is absolutely crucial to running a sub 3-hour marathon. It's that pace. You have to start feeling what it feels like to run longer distances under 6-minute mile pace. If you get to that point, 6:52 pace or 4:16 for a kilometer is not going to feel so aggressive. You're going to feel much more in control. So when just for an example, when I broke 2 hours and 20 minutes for the marathon, I had done so many long runs in the 5:20s and 5:50s at altitude, and some above 6 minutes. But I did that so often that when I was in the race, and because I tapered correctly, which is something else that I'll cover in another video, is you taper down, you're more rested, but it just feels like another long run. I mean, the last 10K of the race is what really counts. I mean,
there are 5 key strategies that I recommend to ensure that you set yourself up for success, so that you get to the finish line with that 2:59:59 on the clock. There are 5 key areas that I want you all to start focusing on now. And there are plenty of great races out there. Preferably, definitely focus on getting on a flat course, and there are plenty out there. Chicago, Rotterdam if you're in Europe, Paris, Amsterdam, Monumental Indianapolis Marathon. It's held in November here in the United States of America. Always a great race. The California International Marathon, where I ran my personal best of 2:19:35. If you're going to break a sub 3-hour marathon, my first recommendation is to find a flat course. Find a fast course. Now, granted, no course is fast unless the athlete is in phenomenal anaerobic shape, but you don't want to go after a sub 3-hour marathon time on a course that's not conducive to get you the best result. And are there athletes out there that are breaking 3 hours for the marathon on hilly courses? Absolutely, it can still be done if you train properly over a hilly terrain. But to have the best chances of success in breaking 3 hours for the marathon, you need to hold 6:52 mile pace for 26.2 miles or 4:16 per kilometer for 42.2 kilometers. No easy task. I'm, as a sub 220 marathoner, anybody, this is my viewpoint, anybody that's going under 3 hours is really at the elite level. And elite is going to be different for everybody. Okay, if you're looking at the guys that are breaking 2 hours and 5 minutes for the marathon, or the females out there, ladies out there that are breaking 2 hours and 30 minutes for the marathon, or 2 hours and 20, or 2 hours and 15 minutes even. World record now for females is 2:14, set in Chicago. If you're looking at that, then it's that's the cream of the cream, the elite of the elite. There are very few athletes around the world that ever go under 3 hours each year that run marathons. It's a very small percentage. So my first tip, definitely get on a course that's going to set you up for success, and that is going to be most conducive to helping you run that 6:52 mile pace or 4:16 per kilometer pace. You want to be on a flat, fast course. Houston is another great race. The Woodlands Marathon in the Woodlands, Texas, pancake flat. Weather conditions are usually decent during those races as well. Houston is held in January. I believe the Woodlands Marathon is held in March. So consider those races as well if you're in that part of the country here in the United States of America. The second tip I wanted to share in running a sub 3-hour marathon is to run a higher percentage of your weekly volume at, near, or far below goal sub 3-hour marathon race pace. And what I mean by at race pace, of course, it's 6:52 mile pace or 4:16 per kilometer pace. Near race pace is going to be anywhere from, it's going to vary from athlete to athlete, but anywhere from like 7-minute mile pace to 7:20 to 7:30 per mile pace, or right around 4:40 to 4:50 per K pace. And then, of course, far below sub 3-hour marathon pace is going to be running at paces that are closer to around 5-minute mile pace or around 3 flat or under 3 flat K pace. So again, doing this, running a higher percentage of your weekly volume at, near, or far below goal race pace is going to assist you in improving your body's lactate tolerance. That is the name of the game when it comes to marathon running, and running a sub 3-hour marathon is being able to clear lactic acid faster than it's building up. And the only way to teach your body to be able to do that effectively is to train much, much faster than goal race pace. You also, which is my number 3 tip in running a sub 3-hour marathon, extend the duration of your tempo runs. If in the past you've done your tempo runs for your marathons, a big mistake a lot of athletes are making is they're running their tempo runs too short. They're spending too little time at their anaerobic threshold. And the longer you can spend at this effort, running at your anaerobic threshold is running closer to anywhere from around 88 to 92% of your maximum heart rate. So very aggressive running, but not so aggressive that you are going into oxygen and debt. Okay, this training at your anaerobic threshold, you can spend several minutes to several, even up over an hour running at your anaerobic threshold. And you have to think long term when it comes to breaking a sub 3-hour marathon too. You're not going to just start off running 10 mile or 16 kilometer tempo runs your first week into a 16-week block of training. All of my training plans and the courses that I have on RunDreamAchieve.com, I even have a course for sub 3-hour marathoners that are trying to break this barrier. We always focus first on getting the athlete to adapt to the stress that is being placed on them. This takes about 3 to 4 weeks. So we focus on periodization. We focus on one specific intensity for 3 weeks. Once the athlete has adapted to that intensity, then we move to the next intensity. And as the athlete gets fitter, the recovery rest period between each one of those reps goes down, so less rest, and the paces per interval, whether it's repeat miles on the track or repeat 600s, repeat 400s, the rest of the paces increases and the rest between those intervals decrease. So that is a key thing. You have to spend a higher percentage of your weekly volume training at the paces that you're going for. Sub 3 hour marathon is extremely competitive. It's a very tough time. Again, 6:52 mile pace is tough enough for even if you go out and run 6:52 mile pace for 5 miles or 8 kilometers. But to go out and do that for 42 kilometers or 42.2 kilometers or 26.2 miles, you have to be in phenomenal aerobic and anaerobic shape. So spend a higher percentage. If say you're doing 70 miles a week and you've done that in the past, you've only spent between 15 to 20 miles of those 70 miles running at under 6:52 mile pace. It's going to be very hard for you to run 2:59 because again, you just simply haven't spent sufficient time practicing running at, near, or far below that pace. And that's a big mistake that a lot of athletes make. They start second guessing themselves and doubting themselves and saying, maybe I don't have what it takes. Look at your training in the past. Look at your volume. Have you been focusing on, which I going into this third tip in terms of running a sub 3 hour marathon. Get beyond just thinking higher volume is the answer to breaking a sub 3 hour marathon. It's about working smarter, not working harder. I got up to 142 miles a week training to run under my personal best of 2:19:35, thinking that, well, to break 2:19, it's only another 35 seconds. I just need to increase my volume. That didn't bring me to the end goal. Okay, I ran my personal best for the marathon on 85 to 90 miles a week. But the mileage I was doing, I was white hot focused on training far below 5-minute mile pace and far below 3-minute K pace, because I knew to break what my goal was to break 2 hours and 22 minutes. I knew I had to hold 5:25 mile pace or around 3:22 to 3:20 per kilometer pace. I had to get trained and get used to training much, much faster than I was going for. So quality over quantity. You hear it all the time, but it's very difficult for us as athletes to really take this advice to heart. Okay, so as you're leading into your races, again, focus on finding a fast, flat course that's going to set you up for success, that's going to give you the best chance of breaking 3 hours and getting in that group of athletes that are going for 2:59 or faster. Sometimes just getting in that group in your marathon and sitting behind them and letting them do the majority of the work is going to help you the most. And if you feel great in the last 10 kilometers of the marathon, make your move in that last 10K, because most athletes are really going to be hurting come that point. So which brings me to the number four strategy. If you want to run a sub 3 hour marathon, aim at a negative split in the race if you can. When I ran 2:19:35, I went out in 107:09 the first half. My personal best for the half marathon is 107:06. So I was running much, much faster than I was ever expecting on going out, at the start of the race. I wasn't expecting on going out that fast, but sometimes when you taper down correctly, and you do everything right in training to break your specific goal race. So in terms of, in your case, breaking 3 hours, sometimes you're just going to have, you're going to be in that flow state. And I was in a flow state. There's no question about it. I was with the leaders I was running with about 5 or 6 Kenyans, a Canadian and a Russian. And they pretty much helped me get to the point where I was, they helped me break that 2:20 marathon barrier. I was still at 1:44:05 through the 20-mile mark, 5:11 mile pace, and then ended up coming in 4th place overall, top American at the 2007 California International Marathon. So use those athletes when you're in the race too, and find a flat course, fast course, very competitive race where you're going to have athletes with you, and there's plenty of great marathons out there that's going to help you break that 3-hour marathon. Number 4, run longer. Another big mistake a lot of athletes make in training for the marathons is they're not running long enough. So in the past, if your longest long run was a 16 miler or maybe a 17 miler, consider doing a 22 to 24 miler. Start spending longer amounts of time on your feet. It's going to help you, even if you're just running easy and relaxed, it's going to help you burn fat and build your endurance. The last tip, the last strategy I want you to start thinking about, if in the past maybe you're a 4:30 marathoner and you're dreaming about running 2:59, or you've run very low threes, 3:05, maybe 3:12, is to start running faster long runs. Another big mistake athletes make is they're great on running long runs and being consistent in that respect, but they're not running fast enough during their long run. So this is a strategy that helped me the most in breaking 2 hours and 20 minutes to go from, my previous best in 2002 was 2:43.36. By 2007, I had run 2:19.35 by using this specific strategy, faster long runs. I was continually doing, I had the motivation to get out the door and train hard like you all do, but I kept running my long runs every single weekend, easy and relaxed. You have to get beyond just running easy and relaxed every weekend. It's going to make you a very strong, long, slow distance runner. You're trying to break a 3-hour marathon, so you have to start running those long runs faster. That's how I built the training plans and the running courses on RunDreamAchieve.com. How I built those, the training in, is varying the paces of the long runs. And there's always, we alternate a faster pace long run followed the following week by an easy, relaxed long run. So to ensure that you're recovering from your harder anaerobic long runs. Again, this is a strategy that a lot of athletes aren't using, and I know if you start focusing on this type of tactic, you'll have a much better chance of breaking 3 hours to the marathon. Sometimes you can do everything right. You're doing the speed sessions on the track, you're doing your 1 VO2 max workout per week, you're training at sprint paces, whether you're doing repeat 600s, repeat 400s, repeat miles on the track. You've done tempo runs. A lot of times you can do it all right and still get it incorrect. The key thing is, and which leads me into my last tip, and this is just a bonus tip, is you have to be tenacious. Athletes that are trying to break a 3-hour marathon are not average. These athletes every athlete I've ever known that has broken a 3-hour marathon is hungry. They are disciplined, motivated, driven for what they want. They are not just interested in being a successful marathoner. They are dedicated. They are fully committed to doing what they want to do, and they will continue to do what they need to do until they get what they want. So be tenacious in your actions. If you're a marathoner, I hope this was helpful for you. If there's anything else I can help you out with, leave me a comment in the comment section below. Feel free to subscribe and give me a like if you can. I appreciate it. It helps the channel grow and more athletes around the world see these videos.
This question is how do you know if you can run a 3-hour marathon? There are a lot of different running calculators online, from the Macmillan Run Calculator, the Daniels VDOT calculator, and I'm a huge advocate of the VDOT02 training platform. I personally coach athletes with this platform myself, but if you're trying to get under 3 hours, you want to be thinking about running a half marathon anywhere from around 1:25:56 or up to around 1:26:20. And again, these calculators, they're just guesstimates, but they're pretty accurate. If you can run a 10-mile time anywhere from around 63:58 to around 64:46, right around that range, you're going to be in definitely the type of fitness level that you need to be in order to break a 3-hour marathon. You need to be able to run, and again, these different calculators, okay, the Daniels VDOT calculator says you need to run a 10K around 39 minutes flat. The Macmillan Run calculator says you need to run around 38:22. The Runner's World Pace Predictor states you need to run right around 39:08. And again, this is for 10K. So Athletes have to keep this in mind. Again, the 3-hour marathon barrier is 6:52 mile pace or 4:16 per kilometer pace. And I've had a lot of athletes that I personally work with or that have followed one of my sub 3-hour marathon training plans that have finally gotten under this barrier. And I had one guy that has 5 kids. He's trained for many years to break the 3-hour marathon. He never felt like he could do it himself, but he went from a personal best of 3 hours and 46 minutes to 2 hours and 58 minutes following my sub 3-hour marathon pro course. So again, when it comes to the 3-hour marathon barrier, it is going to be very, very difficult. There's nothing easy about running under 3 hours for the marathon. You have to watch that first half of the race and not get too hyped up and too aggressive in those first early stages of the race itself. You have to focus on following the principles that I teach on these videos and in my courses and in the training plans. Don't get so focused on just running volume. You have to run volume, but you also need to make sure that you're running a higher percentage of your weekly volume at or below your goal marathon race pace. Get accustomed to running at extremely fast paces at your VO2 max pace once per week. Start extending the duration of your tempo runs. If you've in the past done tempo runs of anywhere from around 8 kilometers to 10 kilometers for a marathon, yes, you're still going to get a great workout from doing that, but that's still relatively too short. Okay, you need to be thinking more towards around 10 miles, 16 kilometers out to around 12 to 13 miles in length for your tempo runs. And again, you're not going to do that overnight, so make sure you have a plan. That's kind of the way I've set up my training plans, the running courses that I teach, and it's all based on progression and gradually introducing the athlete to faster workouts. We don't just jump on the track and start doing repeat miles at 5:45. Okay, for the athlete trying to break 3 hours for the marathon, he or she needs to get 6:52 mile pace or 4:16 kilometer pace to feel more manageable. Okay, so a longer buildup is key. I don't believe in trying to rush the process, especially if you're going after a time this competitive. Optimal time frame, minimum 16 weeks, preferably 20 to 24 weeks. That's why I made those training plans that go out from 5 to 6 months in length. Okay, some athletes out there are working full-time jobs. They don't have as much time to prepare for the races. So maybe 12 to 16 weeks works best for you. Yes, you can still run a sub 3-hour marathon in a shorter amount of time. Okay, 2-3 months, 8 to 12 weeks is definitely still possible, but you had better have had at least a few weeks of easy aerobic base mileage first before you lead into doing faster track sessions, longer tempo runs, faster varied pace long runs every other week, not every week, okay? Because you have to make sure that you're adapting to the workouts you're doing. So if you're running too much of your volume each week too fast, you're definitely not going to adapt. You're going to get fatigued. You're going to get tired, especially if you're not resting well. I always talk about making sure that you're monitoring your morning resting heart rate. Okay, if your morning resting heart rate is usually around 45 to 52 beats per minute, and you're waking up on a routine basis and it's like 57 to 62 beats per minute, you need to, and you had a track session or a tempo run plan for that day, you need to either take that day off or jog and focus on doing that workout the following day. Okay, so it's very key that you pay attention to the other factors that go into running a great 5K marathon, whatever type of distance you're going for. You don't want to just rush into, you're not going to be able to just rush into doing fast intervals or long tempo runs or faster long runs instantly. It's going to take some time, okay? Find a race that is a flat course. Don't try to go after a sub 3-hour marathon on a hilly course. Okay, my recommendation, if you're in Europe, focus on Berlin, focus on London, focus on Paris, focus on Rotterdam. Those are some great races in Europe. If you're in the States, focus on Columbus, focus on California International Marathon. Although it is a net downhill course, it's where I ran my PR 219. There's a lot of rolling hills on that, but there is a lot of flat sections and some downhill sections on that course. Chicago, what's some other great ones? Monumental Indianapolis Marathon. It's in November. That's where I ran my second fastest marathon. finishing 5th in 2011 there. It's basically flat the whole way. There are some just minor small hills on the course, but mainly it's flat. Definitely think about your approach. Be strategic in how you set up your training. Longer build-up is better than a shorter build-up always, okay? Because you're not rushing your fitness. You're not going to be in a great deal of a rush. You're going to allow your body time to adapt, making sure you're hydrating well, making sure you're practicing taking in more fluids during your long runs so that when you get to the race, you will have practiced over and over again how much fluid your stomach can take. Don't make the mistakes in the race. Make your mistakes in training, okay? Mental preparation is key for breaking a 3-hour marathon. You have to make sure that you're training the mind, your subconscious mind, like you're training your body. The problem is most athletes only focus on physical training and they bypass and they neglect what's equally as important, if not more important, and that's mental training. So start taking about 10 to 15 minutes each day, closing your eyes, turn off the devices, see yourself performing at the level that you're really dreaming about. If you want to get across that finish line in 2:59:59 or faster, you have to make sure you're training your mind to do that before it occurs. Yes, you're not going to just be able to mentally rehearse and not do the physical work, okay? You're only doing, but if you're just doing physical training and you're not taking and spending any time whatsoever really rehearsing that great performance, passing people, getting across the finish line with a 2 in front of the clock instead of a 3, then you're shooting yourself in your foot. You're not really doing all of the work. The best world-class runners I've trained with over the years, athletes that could run way faster than I ever ran, combined both the mental and the physical together to run at elite levels. And be patient. You're not going to be able to do this instantly. This is, in my opinion, a sub-3-hour marathon is an elite time, okay? There are so few athletes around the world that run marathons each year that break the 3-hour marathon. I'd say it's anywhere, I'd have to look up the exact stats, but I'd say it's usually around anywhere from 3 to 5% of athletes that run marathons break the 3-hour marathon. So you're in a very elite class of athletes if you can go under 3 hours. Feel free to leave me a comment below this video if you have any questions. If you're having problems trying to break this barrier, let me know in the comment section what's been the biggest issue for you, and maybe I can shoot you some tips. Obviously there are resources below all of my videos and on RunDreamAchieve.com, so definitely check those out. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button and the bell icon so when I make a new video you'll be notified of it. And I hope this video is helpful for you in terms of how do you know if you can run a 3-hour marathon. Make sure you're in that range of the 10K and the half marathon times that I discussed. Definitely check out the calculators, the different running calculators that you can find. I highly recommend V.02. They are without a doubt the best coaching platform, and their V.02 calculator is definitely a great indicator of to give you a guide of what types of times you need to be running for, say, like the 8K, the 10K, 10-mile, half marathon in order to break the 3-hour marathon barrier.
How many miles a week should you run in order to run a sub 3-hour marathon? And I have been asked this numerous times over the years, and as far as running fast for the marathon distance, especially if you're trying to break 3 hours for the marathon, you don't have to get so caught up in high mileage, okay? It's the quality of the mileage that you're doing which is the most important aspect of preparing properly for the marathon. A sub 3-hour marathon, you definitely have to have a level of talent. I mean, you're not going to be able to run 6 minutes and 52 seconds per mile or 4:16 per kilometer without having some form of physiological capability. Now, granted, if you're, like I've said in the past, it's very important. If you are lacking talent, you can definitely make up for it with your work ethic, but you are definitely going to have to put in the heavy work, and you have to train smart. As far as mileage is concerned, in regards to how much mileage should you run per week in order to run a sub 3-hour marathon, I think it taps out right around 70 miles. And even some of the world's top distance running coaches state the same thing. Dr. Joe Vigil is an example of that. He was a mentor of mine and a real good close friend of Jack Hazen, who was my collegiate coach. And we all are training at Malone University when I was training under Coach Hazen. Revolved our training, and our training philosophy revolved around Dr. Vigil's training philosophy. And even he states, right around 65 to 70 miles. If you're trying to break 2 hours and 30 minutes, you're going to focus more on around 85 to 90 miles per week. Now, there's some athletes that prefer to run higher mileage. I have experienced that myself as well. I felt like running higher mileage was the answer for me to break my personal best for the marathon, which is 2 hours, 19 minutes, and 35 seconds. I got up to 142 miles a week. All it did was leave me fatigued and tired. So, and I ran my PR for the marathon on 85 to 90 miles a week. So it kind of really ties into what Coach Vigil was saying. You know, I tapped out right around, like I said, right around 90 miles. So when you're training for a sub 3 hour marathon, make sure you're focused on a longer buildup rather than a shorter buildup. You're going after an elite time, in my opinion. Anything really under 3 hours, you really have to be in superior physical fitness. You have to be very strong mentally as well, because again, you're running at very high quality running intensities. You know, you have to run an average of 6 minutes and 52 seconds per mile, or an average of 4 minutes and 16 seconds per kilometer. So you have to have a very high capability of clearing lactic acid faster than it's building up. And the only way to do that is to make sure that you're sprinkling in enough anaerobic training in your training week. You're not just running easy every single day. You're not just running easy on those long runs. To break a 3 hour marathon, you're for sure going to have to make sure that you are alternating a faster long run one weekend, followed by the next weekend by an easy, relaxed long run. Those varied pace long runs I talk about, that type of strategy is new for most athletes. And the athletes that are starting to use that tactic are setting big personal bests. You know, example of that is Rudy Reyes, who bought one of my 16-week sub 240 marathon training plans. He wanted to break 2 hours and 40 minutes. He went out and ran 2 hours, 35 minutes, and 59 seconds. And sure, he wasn't able to always hit every single workout that was in that training plan, but it's a guide, it's a guesstimate. You know, it's to give you an idea of what types of workouts you need to be doing, the intensities you need to be hitting them at, and the rest periods in between those hard anaerobic workouts that you do. So recovery is essential too. In terms of your mileage, in aiming for a sub 3 hour marathon, again, don't get so caught up in the volume you're doing. Focus on the quality versus the quantity. Okay, I do think runners that are aiming to break a sub 3 hour marathon need to focus on anywhere from around 65 to 70 miles a week. And again, look at how you're setting up your training. You know, the resources on RunDreamAchieve.com, the training courses that I've created, the training plans that I've made. And obviously I do offer monthly coaching with athletes that really want to work with me one-on-one. There is that option as well. But those courses that I teach, I really try to cover as in depth and as in detail as I can on the proper way to train for the half marathon and the marathon distances. For the training plans, you know, it's the same setup. You know, training for a mile and training for a marathon up to the marathon distance, the training philosophy is pretty much the same in terms of being a universal mindset of making sure you're focusing on recovery, knowing that the benefits of your hard training come within the rest period. It doesn't come from just the workout. The workouts will make you 2 to 3 times weaker immediately after that workout's done. But it's the hours after you do a speed training workout, a fartlek workout, hill repetitions, or a long run, or a tempo run. It's the hours after that hard anaerobic workout that you do. That's where the main recovery and the benefits of the hard anaerobic training you're doing, or the aerobic training that you're doing, comes into play. So in order to break a sub 3 hour marathon, like I said, you do have to have a decent amount of volume, and you have to be consistent. Okay, there are very few athletes that I've known over the years that were able to break a 3 hour marathon on running 2 days a week, or running, 15 to 20 miles a week. It can be done, but there are very few athletes that are able to break this particular time barrier with that minimal amount of volume. So yes, you do still, I'm talking about quality over quantity. Quantity is still important, but you have to do a mixture of both very, very fast anaerobic training so that you stress the energy systems of the body adequately, but you also still have to do volume. You still have to put in consistent mileage on a consistent basis. You can't just be lukewarm and have a lukewarm interest and break a 3-hour marathon. It is a very, very fast time. I wish more athletes realized how competitive that particular time barrier is. It's an extremely tough time. You know, they look at athletes that break 2:30 or maybe break 2 hours and 20 minutes, and you know, other athletes consider a sub 3-hour marathon as just a decent time. No, that is an elite time, and I know there's a lot of athletes out there that are training to break this barrier. I also created a course called the sub 3-hour marathon pro course, and that's for athletes that are fully committed. They truly want to break the 3-hour barrier in the marathon. They're highly disciplined, very, very focused on getting to that next level in the marathon event. And so definitely check that out on RunDreamAchieve.com. The particular page on RunDreamAchieve.com that really focuses on that sub 3-hour marathon pro course will give you a little bit more in-depth overview of what the course entails. And that's really what I want to do with all my courses and training plans. I do want to continue to improve them and make them better for the athlete. And again, I want you all to make sure that you're using leverage, okay? Train smarter, not harder, okay? If you're running high mileage and you're running too much of that mileage too aerobically, too easily, it's going to be very, very hard to run any distance at race pace and to be able to be very efficient at clearing lactic acid. So you have to train the energy systems of the body sufficiently enough so that you get the benefit, so that, again, you continue to push the body hard, you rest, you adapt, continue to push the body hard, and you continue to repeat that particular cycle. Longer buildup is better, okay? Preferably 16 weeks for a marathon if you're aiming for a sub 3-hour marathon, but the minimal amount I would recommend is 16 weeks, preferably 20 to 24 weeks. So 5 to 6 month buildup will get you better results because you're not rushing your fitness. You're not jumping intensities in the improper way. You need to first build your aerobic base, have a strong foundation of mileage built first, coupled with doing strides twice per week, and then you start working in marathon specific training, speed development training, hill repetitions, really focusing on being able to really stress the body hard anaerobically on the track and on the roads, and then making sure that you start lessening the amount of recovery in between each one of your intervals. You're not going to be able to do that early on when you're not anaerobically fit, but you have to start somewhere. So again, mileage, yes, you still have to put in a decent amount. I'd say, like I said, in terms of how many miles a week should you run in order to run a sub 3-hour marathon, is around 65 to 70 miles. And if you have any other questions in regards to breaking the 3-hour marathon, feel free to leave me a comment below this video. Make sure to check out all the resources below all of my videos if you're interested in coaching or you're interested in a training plan or a running course to take your training and your racing to the next level. I definitely, without question, am certain that if you follow the fundamentals that I cover and the tactics and strategies that I discuss in these courses and training plans, you are going to set a new personal best. And I look forward to hearing about your sub 3-hour marathon barrier that you've broken. And if this is a goal of yours, feel free to leave me a comment. Let me know where your current personal best is for the marathon.
You have to put in the mileage. It's a very, very elite time. It's a time that very few runners around the world really achieve each year. And it's about consistency. I mean, you can't just be interested in trying to break a 3-hour marathon. It's got to be it's got to be 100% commitment. And you know, the best advice I can give you, if this is something you truly want to do, is really focus on quality over quantity during your weekly training. Don't get so caught up in mileage, but ask yourself the question: what is the percentage of my week? What percentage of my week am I training at or below sub 3-hour marathon pace? Because you know, holding that pace for 26.2 miles, that is the average per mile or per kilometer pace you have to hold. So a lot of your miles are going to be run at well under 652 mile pace or 541 per kilometer pace. So the key strategies as I continue to bring up in the post and on these videos is, especially for runners that are trying to break that specific time, a sub 3 hour marathon, is to really focus on your long run. Get to a point where you're running longer periods of time at a higher heart rate for a longer period, longer duration. Now, obviously, you can't do that in the first few weeks. You don't just start off doing a 20-mile long run at between 6:35 and 7 minute mile pace. That takes obviously time and focus to eventually get to a point where you're running that far for that aggressive type of pace. So focus on short-term gains. Focus on getting to a point where, like early on in your long run, get to between 4 miles and 8 miles at that pace, and then as you get fitter and fitter, you lengthen the amount of time that you're spending at a heart rate between 160 and 165. I highly advise implementing heart rate monitor training in your routine if you truly want to focus on breaking a 3 hour marathon. Heart rate monitor training was something that I never did until I got to Malone University and was coached by Jack Hazen. Now, Jack's been at Malone for over 52 years now. If you can believe that, it's pretty incredible. But he was named the assistant track and field coach for the 2020 or 2012 USA Olympic track and field team. So Jack's very, very well known around the world when it comes to distance running and heart rate monitor training. As you already know, if you're at this level, it already tells me. If you're seeking a sub 3 hour marathon, it already tells me you're well versed in this. But heart rate monitor training is very, very key. It was a huge reason why I was able to lower my marathon down from 2 hours and 43 minutes to 2 hours and 19 minutes. I was really able to focus on the pace and the intensity I was supposed to be running on my easy days, because a lot of times runners, especially runners that are and it don't matter if you're trying to break a 3 hour marathon or a 5 hour marathon, you have to focus on, are you recovering? It's not just so much, obviously this is a highly elite time. A sub 3 hour marathon is very, very tough, very aggressive running. So wearing a heart rate monitor, one, it takes the pressure off of worrying about, like, am I hitting the right splits? It also takes your mind off, psychologically, it takes your mind off of trying to hit a specific mile split, and it focuses, okay, I got to be at this heart rate, so I'm going to glance down every once in a while, and I'm going to be, okay, I'm at 160 or I'm at 165. Oh, I got up to 172, but I'm still running flat. I need to back off. Now, gradually, if you're running on hills, your heart rate's going to be a little bit higher, so it's going to fluctuate. But key point is, when I was training, well, I'm still training, but when I was trying to break a 2 hour and 22-minute marathon, which was my goal, I focused on, I was training out in Colorado Springs, so I'd always try to focus on getting a flat course, dirt roads, preferably dirt roads, which in my case I was able to get out there, and just focus on holding a heart rate anywhere between 158 and 165, around that range. That was kind of like the sweet spot in terms of getting the best results. But on easy days, I would always focus on 130 to 150. You really want to, it's a huge key point in trying to break a sub 3 hour marathon is finding the right balance in how you're training and not training too hard on your easy days, because really recovery is just as important as the workouts themselves. It's, all of the benefits come in the rest. It's not the workout where you get all the benefits, you get it from the rest. So heart rate monitor is just kind of it's a gauge. It kind of guides you where you need to be, what paces you need to be running at on those easy days and on the hard days. Like if you're doing a tempo run, tempo run, you really want to hold your heart rate anywhere from like 168 to 175. So it's, very, very aggressive running, but it kind of just takes the stress off of worrying about mile splits and just kind of letting the mile splits come as they go. You're focusing on heart rate. You're not, focusing on anything else. So that's one big tip if you're trying to break a 3 hour marathon. Get involved. Get focused on the heart rate monitor. Find a great heart rate monitor online. You can find. I use the Garmin 620. And check out the archives page on RunDreamAchieve too. I've written a lot of posts on heart rate monitor training. So do that. Focus on the long run. Get to a point where you're extending the amount of time that you're running at a heart rate at a higher heart rate, preferably between 160, 165, around that range. That's running anywhere from about 88 to 90%. Could be from 85 to 90%, around that range. So that's the key, because you want to get to a point where you're burning fat at race speeds, or close to race speeds, and conserving carbohydrate. Your body only has about 1,700 to 1,800 calories of carbohydrate stored. So once you run out of carbs, and if you've run the marathon and you've run out of gas, you already know it's very, very difficult. It doesn't matter how much motivation you have to continue running when your body runs out of sugars. So if you can get your body to rely more on fats, which we have a lot more storage of, and conserve carbohydrates, that's really going to set you up for success in breaking the 3-hour marathon, because sub 3 hours, as I said before, is it's an elite time. It's a very, very fast, and I would say you do need a little bit of talent, obviously, to put that type of time together. It's not a time where you can just kind of half-ass it and think, well, I'll run 3 days a week and, take the rest of the week and, just relax. You really got to be focused 100%. And you got to be all in to break a 3-hour marathon. So focus on those tips. Be patient, because it doesn't matter where you're at, especially if you're trying to go after a 3-hour marathon sub 3. You're really gonna have to be patient with getting to a point where your fitness, where you're able to hit the splits that you're wanting to hit in training. A long run. I knew I was ready when I was getting to a point where I was running between 5 minutes and 20 seconds to 5 minutes and 50 seconds per mile, for 18 to 22 miles. I knew I was ready then. Obviously, at that time, my goal was to break 2 hours and 22 minutes. That's 5 minutes and 25 seconds per mile. So I knew doing my long runs at like 6:45 pace wasn't going to do it. It was going to, running at that pace at a slower pace will build strength and stamina. But when it comes to racing a marathon, that's a sub 3-hour marathon time is a very specific marathon effort, which requires very, very specific types of training.
Pace. What do you need to do in order to sustain that pace for your marathon? And there are athletes all over the world that are trying to run a 2:59:59 or faster for the marathon distance. And I can assure you that if you're aiming for sub 3 hours for the marathon, you had better have your head on straight, because a sub 3-hour marathon is an elite time. It's a time that many athletes are training to achieve. And a lot of times athletes that miss this goal they just need to make a few adjustments in their training. There's too many leaks in their training, and a lot of times they're starting to second guess themselves. Either they're far too old, or maybe they just don't have what it takes, when that's not necessarily the case. If you're going to run 2:59:59, you have to get beyond the idea of thinking that higher volume is the answer. There are plenty of athletes around the world that run low mileage that break 3 hours for the marathon. It's what you're doing in training. It's how you're setting up your training. It's the percentage of anaerobic training versus aerobic training that you're doing that's going to dictate how successful you are at becoming a sub 3 hour marathoner. And I have a personal best of 2 hours, 19 minutes and 35 seconds, comes out to 5:19 per mile or 3:18 per kilometer that I held at the 2007 California International Marathon. I finished 4th place and the top American in that race. So I understand how fast the sub 3 hour marathon is. I know what you all are dealing with. I think for you to sustain sub 3 hour marathon pace, you have to train, and I talk about this in all other videos, you have to train well below sub 3 hour marathon pace, which is 6:52 per mile or 4:16 per kilometer in order to run 2:59:59 or faster for the marathon. You have to get beyond. You have to also make sure that you're surrounding yourself with positive people. Okay, when I had a personal best of 2:43:36, I had a few athletes around me, only one that told me that I should quit and that 2:43:36 wasn't going to do anything on the national stage, and that it just simply wasn't fast enough. Okay, and I was aiming for an elite unit in the U.S. Army world-class athlete program, so 2:43 obviously wasn't fast enough. But you have to surround yourself with the right people. You have to make sure that you're training, if you have the opportunity, train with athletes that are much faster than you, that are going to push you to the next level and get you beyond your comfort zone. Because as long as you stay in that comfort zone in your training, you're not going to run 2:59:59. The fact that you're watching this video already tells me you're already driven, you're already motivated, you're disciplined, you know what it takes to succeed, you're willing to put in the heavy work long enough in order to get to 2:59:59. I'll tell you from experience, if you want to make big leaps in the marathon, you have got to start training those long runs. Make sure that you're starting to implement varied pace long runs in your preparation. I have training plans and running courses on RunDreamAchieve.com that are specifically built for athletes that are trying to run under 3 hours for the marathon. And the focus behind those products is to get you to work smarter rather than harder. Okay, working hard is not going to guarantee you a sub 3 hour marathon. It's not going to guarantee you that you're going to be able to sustain sub 3 hour marathon pace for 26.2 miles or 42.2 kilometers. It's how smart you're working. It's how you're setting up your training. It's the little things that you're going to be doing on your off hours: hydration, proper sleep, making sure you're surrounding yourself with the right positive individuals, you're listening to positive information. Stress and high cortisone levels will definitely destroy an athlete's motivation over the long term. You have to make sure that you're filling your mind with positive and the right information. Okay, it's not just the anaerobic training that you do that's going to get you under 3 hours for the marathon by the finish of the marathon distance. You have to make sure that you're doing other things, the other fundamentals correctly as well. It's jogging on recovery days, making sure you're recovering from those hard anaerobic workouts that you're doing. If you want to get to a point where you can sustain 6:52 mile pace or 4:16 per kilometer pace for that entire distance, you have to get your body trained in a way that you're able to clear lactic acid faster than it's building up. And the only way to do that is to do a combination of training well below goal race pace, which is training at your VO2 max. That's your maximum oxygen uptake. It's the point where you're doing repeat miles, preferably well under 6-minute mile pace. Okay, that's not the type of pace you're going to be able to sustain for the marathon, but you can do that in training so that you can do hard anaerobic efforts where you're running closer to your maximum heart rate for only a few minutes. Then you give yourself 3 to 4 minutes of recovery between each one of those mile repetitions on the track. Even with the way I trained over the years, I would do 5 to 6 1-mile repetitions on the track, but they would be well under my goal race pace. My goal race pace was, my goal was to break 2 hours and 22 minutes, which back in 2007 was a USA track and field Olympic trials B standard time. In order to qualify for the Olympic trials, you need to run 2:22 flat or below. So my goal was 5:25. Your goal is 6:52. Okay, so I would run my mile repeats anywhere from 4:45 to 4:50 at altitude, sometimes by myself, sometimes with other athletes. But it was, again, the focus was get that 5:25 mile pace to feel easier. It's going to be difficult in the race. It's going to hurt because it's still a highly aggressive time. In your case, you're trying to run 6:52 mile pace or 4:16 kilometer pace for that entire distance. So you have to set up your training in such a way that's going to set you up for success, that's going to get you to a point where you can sustain that pace and not slow down. There are plenty of athletes around the world that can run sub 3 hour marathon pace for a particular section of the race, but they start falling apart maybe in the last 10 kilometers of the race. Maybe they go out far too aggressive in the early stages of their race, and they're not able to sustain the pace for the latter stages of their event. And so you have to have a long-term approach. You're not going to run a sub 3 hour marathon or sustain sub 3 hour marathon pace by thinking that's going to happen in a matter of weeks. Sometimes you have to do several iterations of train up in order for you to run sub 3 hours. Again, it's an elite time. What you're trying to do is extremely difficult. There are very few athletes around the world that break 2 hours or break 3 hours each year. Very small percentage. And obviously, the faster you're trying to run,
the more that's going to be required out of you. Okay, so the long runs, start varying up the pace. What I mean by that is not running hard every single weekend. What I would do is I would first spend probably 4 weeks just running easy base mileage, and then start a 16-week block of training. Maybe you run the first 4 weeks of that 16-week block of training easy, and then you focus on the last 12 weeks. But 4 months is plenty of time to prepare for a sub 3 hour marathon. Again, it's how you set up your training. It's the percentage of your weekly volume. If you're running 95% of your weekly volume at 8 to 9 minute mile pace, it's going to be very difficult to run 6:52 mile pace or 4:16 per K for that marathon. Okay, and it's not because you don't have what it takes. Okay, it's just the fact that you're running too high of a percentage of your weekly volume far too slow. So if you haven't broken 3 hours yet, it's not a question of if you can do it, it's a question of when you do it. And so start researching on RunDreamAchieve.com if need be. Invest in yourself. Get a training plan, a sub 3 hour marathon training plan on the site. Or I have a sub 3 hour marathon pro course where I go very in depth on what you need to be doing, from heart rate training, from mental visualization, mental training, which is a big piece of sub 3 hour marathon preparation. We all know how to train hard. We all know how to get on the track and train well, and to train anaerobically and run very hard, doing those speed sessions. But the biggest mistake athletes make that are trying to run under 3 hours is they're not preparing mentally. You have to spend time taking 10 to 20 minutes every single day, consistently, persistently, and not slacking on your mental preparation. Visualize what you want to do. You have to see yourself running 2:59:59 on that clock. See yourself getting across the finish line with that time on the clock every single day. It's the mental training piece of the puzzle that I guarantee your competition is neglecting. They're so focused, so zeroed in on the physical aspect of preparation that they fail to realize the even more important part of it, and that's mental training. When I was a 2:43 marathoner, I continually saw myself running 2:21:59. I knew I was able to do it. I knew I was going to do it. I didn't know when, but I knew that I was doing my homework and training, and that I was going to get to a point where I was going to do it. And I saw myself doing it in my mind first. Okay, I cannot stress this enough. Billy Mills, the 1964 Olympic 10,000 meter gold medalist, the last American to win gold in the Olympics, said it best. He said the subconscious mind cannot tell the difference between reality or imagination. So spend time seeing yourself doing it. You have to train your subconscious mind to dictate where you want to go before it occurs in real life. So it has to happen in the mind before it happens in reality. So it's a combination of training well below goal race pace, 6:52 mile pace, 4:16 kilometer pace. It's a matter of doing much longer tempo runs. If in the past you've not been able to sustain that sub 3 hour marathon pace for the entire race, start looking at how you've set up your tempo runs in the past. Have they been too short? If you're doing tempo runs of 8 kilometers in distance, you need to start thinking, okay, maybe I need to double that. Maybe I need to do 10 miles or 16 kilometers for my tempo runs. Or maybe I need to even think about going out toward 20 to 25 kilometers for my tempo runs. That's what I did, and that's a big part of the reason why I was able to run under 2 hours and 20 minutes for the marathon. I was doing tempo runs out to around 15 to 16 miles in length. I was doing longer long runs. I got out to 28 to 30 miles for my long runs. I don't think you necessarily need to go that far. I think there's a point of diminished returns when it comes to doing your long runs. I think for marathoners, anywhere from 20 miles, so 32 kilometers out to around 35 kilometers is sufficient, out to around 24 to 25 miles in length. But again, it's not volume, it's the quality of your volume. It's the quality of your training that you're doing that's going to set you up to be able to really sustain pace, that sub 3 hour marathon pace, longer than your competition. It's how you set up your taper. Do a 10-day taper. Do not do a 21-day taper. I'm not saying 3 weeks doesn't work, because it does work for a lot of athletes, but definitely consider doing a 10-day taper. Okay? Again, if you want to bypass the mistakes of other athletes, start doing what successful athletes are doing. Emulate what they do. Start studying how they think. Athletes that run, when I ran 219, I was zeroed in, I was 100% focused. There were no distraction. If there was distractions, I was focused. So make sure that, there's 24 hours in a day. You can balance whatever you need to do. It's just depending on how badly you want success. Again, sub 3 hour marathon, athletes that are going for this time are highly driven, focused, disciplined athletes, and there's no shortcuts to running under 3 hours. So I hope this video is a little bit of tough love for you all in terms of running sub 3 hour marathon pacing, being able to do it more efficiently and more effectively. If there's anything I missed, leave me a comment below this video and let me know your thoughts. Let me know where your current personal best is for the marathon. It'd be interesting to know, and what's been causing you the biggest problems in the past. Again, there's many resources below all my videos. Definitely look below the videos. RunDreamAchieve.com has a lot of free content as well as paid content. So if you want to get a little bit more in depth with your training and you want one-on-one coaching, that option's there. There's training plans, there's running courses. Feel free to stop in. And again, here on the channel, there's a lot of content as well. Free content I just want to share with you all as well, because I want you all to succeed, get better results, train smarter rather than harder.
Hey guys, hope you're having a great day. Today's training topic, we're going to be talking about some sub 3 hour marathon training plan strategies that I've created in a lot of the training programs that I've created on RunDreamAchieve.com, as well as the running courses as well. I do know if you're going to break a sub 3 hour marathon, you really have to start focusing more on quality over quantity. I talk a lot about this, I continue to stress this, but if too high a percentage of your weekly volume is spent running at speeds that are about a minute, 35 seconds to a minute slower than your goal race pace, it's going to be very difficult to run a 2:59:59 for the marathon. And anybody that's going after a sub 3 hour marathon is definitely going to want to have a sub 3 hour marathon training plan that's going to set them up for success, where you know exactly what you need to be doing on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis for that 16-week block of training. And I have a training running course that I created on RunDreamAchieve called the Sub 3 Hour Marathon Pro course. And this is for highly skilled, highly disciplined, focused athletes that are trying to run 2:59:59 or faster for the marathon. To run that fast, you've got to hold 6:52 mile pace. I've built my running courses and my training programs around a large portion of the training around heart rate monitor training, where we focus on training the anaerobic systems of the body as well as the aerobic systems of the body. And I didn't really focus on heart rate monitor training until 1996 when I was a freshman in college under Jack Hazen. Jack Hazen is one of the world's top distance running coaches, middle distance coaches as well, and he kind of got me involved in focusing more on heart rate over worrying about what kilometer splits or what mile splits I was hitting during my training. And pretty much since 1996, I've focused mainly on heart rate monitor training. I think that as your heart gets stronger, as you get fitter, the miles and the splits, the kilometer splits, will take care of themselves. You need to focus more on smarter training rather than working harder to run a sub 3 hour marathon. It's not about volume, it's about the quality of the volume that you're putting in, as well as training at paces that are closer to 6-minute mile pace in order to get that 6:52 mile pace to feel more in control. You do not want it to feel aggressive. And a sub 3 hour marathon, anybody that's going for that type of time is an elite athlete, in my opinion. Anything under 3 hours for the marathon distance, to me, is an elite time. I've run 2:19:35 for the marathon, debuted in the distance with a 2:43:36 at the 2002 New York City Marathon. So I know how difficult a sub 3 hour marathon is. I've experienced setbacks as well over the years, and I dealt with trying to figure out what I needed to do to run faster for that 42.2K, 26.2 mile distance. And I've
really felt that the big reasons why, the big ways for you to get to a point where you can break a sub 3 hour marathon is you run faster paced long runs. I teach this in the running courses. The sub 3 hour marathon pro, we cover this heavily, as well as there's numerous video tutorials in that the sub 3 hour marathon pro course, where I teach you a lot of specifics on race pace training, on mindset, on nutrition, weight training, a lot of different topics that we cover to get to a point where you have that overview of what you're trying to do and what you need to be doing. And at the end of the running course, there is a sub 3 hour marathon training schedule. That's a 16-week block of training where you know exactly what you need to be doing on a daily basis for those 4 straight months. The big reason why I think a lot of athletes are getting results is because they're at the end of the training program. I conclude with a 10-day taper and not a 3-week taper. I think I'm a big believer in following a 10-day taper, because it will not, in a lot of cases, a lot of athletes do the 3-week taper, but with a 10-day taper, you don't feel as lethargic and as tired as a lot of athletes. I've tried 3 weeks in the past, but I've always set personal best doing a 10-day taper rather than a 3-week taper. So that's another benefit of enrolling in the sub 3 hour marathon pro course, is you get to know exactly what a 2:19 marathoner, how that training, that athlete has done training over the years to get the results that the results that I've been able to achieve in the sport. I think that you'll learn a lot more tactics, a lot of different strategies that some of the world's top distance coaches taught me. Examples of coaches I've been taught by is Dr. Joe Vigil. He was the coach at Adams State University. He was the coach of the first team in NCAA cross-country history that went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at the national championship. As well as Jack Hazen, who's been at Malone University for about 52 years, one of the world's top coaches. And Lisa Rainsberger, who coached me when I was with the World Class Athlete program. She won the 1985 Boston Marathon, is a 2:28 marathoner herself, 52:10 for 10 miles. Really a phenomenal athlete. So a lot of what you'll learn in those in the sub 3 hour marathon pro course is those types of mindset, those types of strategies that will teach you a different way of preparing for the sub 3 hour marathon barrier and getting under that time barrier. I also have training programs on RunDreamAchieve.com that are not as extensive as the running courses. They're basically just the training schedules that you need to follow in order to run the specific time you're going for, whether it's a 5K all the way up to the marathon distance. They vary in duration from 4 weeks to 16 weeks. I definitely recommend that if you're aiming for a sub 3 hour marathon, you need to train for at least 12 weeks and preferably at 16 weeks. You need that 4-month block of training where you can really build into your endurance, focus on the anaerobic threshold workouts that we do, the aerobic capacity workouts, those VO2 max workouts where you're pushing your heart rate at max efforts or very close to heart rate at max efforts. That's really key to train at least once a week doing VO2 max workouts, pushing the body at those really high anaerobic efforts where you're running much faster, preferably around 30 seconds or faster than your marathon race pace. A lot of times closer to a minute faster than your goal marathon race pace. That's going to make your goal marathon race pace feel more in control, less aggressive, and you're going to be able to sustain that pace. You're going to be able to teach your body to burn lactic acid faster than it's building up and burn fat at race pace and to conserve carbohydrate. That is what you do not want to run out of in the marathon. The big reason why a lot of athletes hit the wall is because they're running way too fast early on in the race and their muscles shut down. They run out of sugars, but also they're producing such a high amount of lactic acid that their body can't clear it. And it's the hydrogen ion of lactic acid that's the component that really shuts down our muscle functioning. And the best way to be able to sustain sub 3 hour marathon pace is to, one, invest in a sub 3 hour marathon training plan that's going to tell you exactly what you need to be doing in your preparation to get under that sub 3 hour marathon barrier and to run that 2:59:59. You have to do more than the average athlete to run a time that fast. Anything in the twos is an elite time in my opinion, especially at 2:59:59 or anything under is a elite, highly aggressive, competitive marathon time. And so you're going to have to think outside the box. You're going to have to do the things most other athletes are not willing to do in order to run that fast. A lot of my background has been around learning the ebbs and flows of the business of middle to long distance running. I started off just like anybody else. I didn't have a lot of talent in high school. Started off running the mile in 5:30 as a freshman in high school, and I ran 11:30 for the 2 mile in high school as a freshman. By the time I graduated high school, I ran 4:25 for the mile, and 2 flat for the 800, and 9:46 for the 2 mile. Continued to train after high school, went on to college, ran 15:19 for the 5K, 1:13 for the half marathon, 4 flat for the 1500 meter. Then continued on after college to train military, enlisted into the military in 2002, became a member of the U.S. Army World Class Athlete Program in 2007, and ultimately achieved a 2008 USA Olympic Trials A standard marathon time, running under 2 hours 20 minutes at the 2007 California International Marathon. I ended up finishing 4th place overall as the top American and ran 2:19:35. So that's kind of the background that I've had with the sport. So I definitely know what it takes to run a sub 3 hour marathon and what a sub 3 hour marathon training plan needs to entail in order to get the athlete to train it at the proper level to get the best results at the end. And again, running easy, long, slow mileage is still very important. I stress this, not just the faster pace long runs and doing the longer anaerobic threshold runs where we extend out from like starting off at around 3 to 4 miles and extending out to between 10 to 12 miles in length. But running easy is still very important because you want to be able to, your body to be able to react to the physiological changes that are occurring from that heavy anaerobic workouts that you're doing. Whether those are fartlek workouts, 3 minutes hard, 2 minutes easy, 3 minutes hard, 2 minutes easy, or doing repetitions on the track, repeat Ks, repeat miles, repeat 600s. You want to be able to recover from those heavy, fast-paced efforts. So running easy, especially on your easy days, is one of the most critical aspects of preparing for a sub 3 hour marathon. You want to train smarter rather than harder. We have plenty of hard-working athletes around the world that do everything they possibly can do and still don't break the 3 hour marathon barrier. They're out there doing, 100 miles to, 150K per week, crazy mileage, but still have difficulties holding that 6:52 mile pace for the entire 26.2, 42.2 kilometer event. And a big reason why is they're not spending sufficient time training at paces much faster than 6:52 per mile pace. You want to get closer to a point where you can do mile repetitions on the track in around 5 minutes and 45 seconds to 5:50 per mile, and do about 6 reps of those at that pace with about a 2-minute recovery, or doing repeat 2 miles in around closer to 12 flat per 2 mile, with around 5 to 6 minutes recovery in between each three repetitions of those repeat 2 miles. So those types of workouts, as well as extending the amount of time we're spending at the anaerobic threshold, which is the point where lactic acid starts to build up in your bloodstream. You want to be able to extend that time, spend more time and more duration training at that heart rate. That way you can get to a point where you're going to be able to improve your body's lactate tolerance at a very high level. And then when you start to drop your volume and you do that 10-day taper and do that 3 mile at marathon goal race pace 4 days out from the big race, you are going to go into your marathon in peak shape. You're going to have the mindset because you visualized yourself running 2:59:59 over and over and over again for at least 15 to 20 minutes every single day for that 4-month period. You want to stay consistent with your mental training as well. The great Billy Mills said it best. He said, the subconscious mind cannot tell the difference between reality or imagination. It doesn't know the difference between you being a 3:59 marathoner right now or a 2:59 marathon athlete. So you have to, in a way, trick your mind into believing something that you're not currently capable of doing yet. But if you visualize yourself doing it on top of doing the required heavy anaerobic work, aerobic work, VO2 max training work, both of those are going to combine, and you're going to get to your race in peak shape, and you're going to break the sub 3 hour marathon barrier. So, hey team, so today's video I want to talk on sub 3 hour marathon workouts, and I have had other subscribers, other athletes reach out to me and want to have new videos made where I'm talking more about specific types of workouts that they need to be doing in order to run their chosen race time that they're going after. So as you all know, a sub 3 hour marathon requires the athlete to be able to sustain 6 minutes and 52 seconds per mile, or 4 minutes and 16 seconds per kilometer. So again, you have to get that race pace to feel more moderate, more like a tempo run rather than race pace effort. And it's not something that happens quickly. Again, as I talk about in other videos, it takes anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks for your body to adapt to any stress load that you're placing on it. So the training plans, running courses that I've created on RunDreamAchieve.com are 16 weeks in length for a reason. And I always recommend, if you're going to start a sub 3 hour marathon plan or a sub 2:30 marathon plan or sub 4 hour marathon plan, focus on running the first 4 weeks of your buildup, just running easy, relaxed aerobic running first, and then move into a 16-week block of training. So the 16 weeks that we focus on is mainly those first 4 weeks is you're building your aerobic base. You're focusing on doing strides 2 to 3 times per week, running 4 to 6 100-meter strides during your easy days. And again, you can do those strides before, during, or after your easy runs. And what's great about doing strides is you're working on your acceleration, you're working on form, you're working on leg turnover. And again, they're so short that you're not going to build up any significant lactic acid during doing those types of workouts. Then we move into the phase of training where you're focusing more on training close to goal race pace, but not quite. So it's more of moderate types of workouts. Intervals are going to be not quite as aggressive. So the types of workouts I would be focusing on, especially when I was very fit, and I'm more toward around that 8-week to 10-week period of a 16-week block of training, anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks into the training block. We start focusing heavily on 5 to 6 1-mile repetitions. And then once the athlete is very fit, you need to focus on getting those mile repeats down to around 5:32 to 5:34 per rep. Okay, so early on in your training, most of the time I focus on giving the athlete around 4 minutes of recovery early on when they're not very anaerobically fit. And then as the athlete progresses through the training plan, the time in terms of rest between those intervals lessens, and the speed of the intervals increase. So once we move into the third section, the third 4-week block of a 16-week block of training, we start focusing on marathon race specific training. So we're focusing on training at or far below goal sub 3 hour marathon pace. So again, 6:52 mile pace is what you need to hold for 26.2 miles. So you have to run well below 5 minutes and 40 second marathon, or 5 minutes and 40 seconds per mile pace, or well below 4-minute kilometer pace, so that again we get that sub 3 hour marathon race pace to feel more in control. Again, pace sustainment is the key. So yes, you have to put in endurance. You still have to put in easy, relaxed running so that you can recover from the hard anaerobic workouts you're doing. But sub 3 hour marathon workouts, the focus would be heavily on speed development, 16 400-meter repetitions where you're running closer down toward around a minute and 20 seconds per rep. So again, that's 5 minutes and 40 seconds per mile pace. Very, very fast, very aggressive. So running at 120 to 130 per 400 meter and doing that 16 times in a row with very minimal rest. Early on we may focus on giving the athlete between about 2 minutes recovery, but
once the athlete has adapted to the workouts we're doing, 60 seconds rest is all that we're going to be providing to the athlete. So again, that's what's key about doing VO2 max workouts, is you're running much faster than sub 3 hour marathon pace. You're running down toward closer to around sub 2:30 marathon pace because you're sprinting. You're at sprint pace efforts. You're running much faster than you're planning on going to run for the full marathon distance. Working on, like I said, speed development is key. Doing longer tempo runs early on in the training phase. You should focus on doing try to focus on 3 to 4 miles early on for a tempo run. And again, your tempo run should be run at around 88 to 92% of your maximum heart rate. And again, that's going to vary from athlete to athlete based on the age of the athlete as well. The key things to keep in mind in terms of sub 3 hour marathon workouts is, one, longer tempo runs. Again, starting off with 3 to 4 miles and then lengthening the distance of those tempo runs where you're getting it out toward around 7 to 12 to 13 miles in length. Even during my own marathon buildup, I would get out to around 25 kilometers, around 15 miles in length, focusing on running about 10 to 15 seconds slower than goal race pace. So it's not quite at race pace, but it's close to it. Sometimes you're going to feel phenomenal, and you're going to be running very close to race pace, sometimes even a few miles under goal race pace. I talk about the long runs. For a long run, for somebody that's going for a sub 3 hour marathon, in terms of sub 3 hour marathon workouts, lengthening that long run out. So it's not just about running faster, varied pace long runs, but it's also about running longer. If your longest long run is 12 miles and you're training for a marathon, you want to get to a point where you get that long run out closer to around 20 miles in length. I think really anything over 22 miles doesn't necessarily help the athlete that much more. If you're normally running 18 to 20 miles and you say, hey, maybe I should do a 24 to 25 miler, and maybe is what I need to run a faster marathon. Again, always focus on how you're setting up your training. What percentage of your weekly volume are you training at or below sub 3 hour marathon race pace? And if that percentage is too low, then you have to start making some adjustments in how you're prepping for your sub 3 hour marathon attempt in the future. Okay, so the best middle to long distance runners run up toward right around 40% of their weekly volume at or below goal race pace. So when I was training for marathons, and if I was going for a sub 3 hour marathon, the types of workouts I would be doing is getting to a point where I could get my mile repeats down around 532 to 534 per rep at my fittest. And again, you're running well under a minute faster than goal marathon race pace when you're doing those intervals. Okay, so doing repeat 400s around a minute and 18 to minute 22 seconds per rep. Again, much faster, much more aggressive running than you're planning on running in your marathon. That's how these are the same types of tactics I use to go from 243.36 to 219.35. It didn't happen quickly. I had a lot of ebbs and flows along the way, a lot of setbacks too, and I got my rear end handed to me many times in races. But I also got it right several times too, and was able to outrun some world-class runners myself. So again, you have to focus on what is the goal race pace I'm going for, and in your case, it's 6:52 mile pace or 4:16 kilometer pace. What do I need to do in order to get that sub 3 hour marathon pace to feel less aggressive on my body? And I talk about doing volume and doing it on a consistent basis, but also tapering correctly, also factoring in all the other variables that go into a sub 3 hour marathon. Getting proper rest, mental training, which most athletes neglect. We focus on physical training most of the time, but world-class runners, national class athletes, elite level performers know how powerful mental rehearsal is. So if you are not spending 10 to 15 minutes every single day seeing yourself getting across the finish line with 2:59.59 on the clock, you're only doing 50% of the work. Okay, if you're going to be great at this sport and great at this distance, you have got to put in and do the other things that the other athletes that you'll be competing against more than likely are going to be neglecting. The best middle to long distance runners know how important mental training is, so don't neglect that. Talked about longer tempo runs, getting it, because early on when you're not very fit, 3 to 4 miles is going to be very difficult. It's hard for anybody, including me, first starting off. Again, you got to allot 3 to 4 weeks for your body to adapt to that stress load before you move on toward doing longer tempo runs of, say, 7, 8, 9, 10, and further, up to around 13 to 15 miles at the longest for a tempo run. Again, this is and varied pace, faster long runs are important too. So the types of varied pace long runs that I'm talking about is, early on when you're not very fit, it may just be a steady, long steady state long run where you're focusing on running around 85% of your maximum heart rate. So when I was at my fittest, I was running at 160 beats per minute, and that was at my fittest. I would be running around 520s to 550s in that range per mile pace at altitude. So now, and that was when I was 31. So now I'm 45, and my maximum heart rate is probably around 174 to 175. So my heart rate I would be focusing on now, going for a sub 3 hour marathon, would be around 148 to 149 beats per minute. So running at 85% of your maximum heart rate for those long runs will make you much stronger. It's going to build the endurance, it's going to build the strength and stamina that you're going to need. And you're not focusing just specifically on long, slow, and easy every single weekend. You're trying to go after a very tough time. There's a lot of athletes around the world that are working hard, that are trying to break a 3 hour marathon that never do. And it's not because they don't have the ability or the tenacity to do it. It's because they're spending too small amount of a percentage of their weekly volume running their kilometers or their mileage too slow. So you need to up that to around 40% at your, once you're extremely fit. And again, be patient with yourself. Sufficient time for your body to recover from these hard workouts you're doing. You have to jog on those easy days. Like I said, I've trained with some world-class runners that would go out and run 9 to 10 minute mile pace on their easy days. Now, I do know 9 to 10 minute mile pace for a lot of athletes, that might be their race pace. So we all come from different backgrounds. We all have different capabilities. But in terms of sub 3 hour marathon workouts, like I said, these are the types of workouts I would be focusing on. You're working on one VO2 max workout per week, where you're working on repeat 200s, repeat 3s, repeat 600s, repeat Ks, repeat miles, and repeat 2 miles on the track. If you can get to a point where you're doing 3 2-mile repetitions on the track, right around 11:20 per rep, again, that's 540 mile pace. So again, much faster than goal race pace that you're going for. And it's going to make that sub 3 hour marathon pace feel easier. So again, this is a topic that I can talk about all day, but I don't want to make the video too long. But I do want to discuss some of the sub 3 hour marathon workouts that I would be thinking about if I was going for a 2:59:59 marathon time. So hope this video was helpful for you. If you have any other questions, leave me a comment below. Let me know where you're currently at in your training, what your goals are for 2022 for the marathon. And definitely, if you are new to the channel, hit that bell icon, the subscribe button, and like this video. Share it with as many people as you can, so more athletes from around the world can see these videos and hopefully be helped by them. And always, definitely check out the resources below all my videos. There's running courses, there's monthly coaching options, there's training plans on RunDreamAchieve.com that are there for you to help take your running to the next level. So I wish you all the best, and I'll talk to you in the next video.